Yeah. Thanks for good to see you all again. It's gone 2 o'clock, so I'll officially open the meeting of the Salcombe Harbour Board for the Monday, the 19th of October, 2020. Just to remind everyone that this meeting is being broadcast. Sounds a bit grand, but it's online, and also being taped, so that members of the public will be able to see this as and when they so wish. I will move on to the agenda. So item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have no apologies at all, and for the purpose of the broadcast, we have all 10 board members on the call. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. White. That's good news. Item 2, the minutes, to approve as correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of June 2020. Members, if you've got any issues or complaints, if you could put that in the messaging board, or shout out if I don't see it there. Otherwise, I'll take that you're all in agreement that they can be signed as a correct record.
There's nobody indicating a wish to type in the box, Chair.
Okay, wishing thank you very much, members, and I will sign those virtually as a correct record. Item 3, urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business that needs to be brought forward. Item 4, division of agenda. As you'll see, members, there is a division of the agenda at item 11 for item 12. Having discussed this with the Harbour Master and council officers, there's only one section of it that should be that's got commercially sensitive information. That is about the amount of money for dredging. So what I intend to do is to take that as an open item for the public, and if members wish to discuss the amounts of money for the dredging, then we can certainly go into we will at that stage go into closed session. But otherwise, we can just take that as an open item, and I understand that Mr. White will be putting that up on the agenda. We'll be putting that item up as if it was an open item anyway, taking out the issues concerned with dredging. Item 5, declarations of interest, please.
Chris, a business owner and moorings in Salcombe.
A Hugh marriage, but I haven't managed to get my boat in the water this year, so I possibly don't count, but I'll stick a declaration of interest in anyway.
Mark Taylor, mooring.
Thank you, Mark. So I've got Mark, Chris, Hugh,
Ali Jones,
Ian and Malcolm, all the moorings. Ali,
and myself, mooring and boats business in Salcombe.
So like Chris, yeah. Any more? Right. We've got Malcolm there. Ali, yeah. Okay. Mr. White, have you got those?
I've got those. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I'm in I keep thinking I'm in the DMC meeting, so I'm being a little bit more formal than we usually are.
Very impressive.
Right. So I'll move back to calling you Daryl. Right. Okay. Sorry. Chris, you. Yeah. Okay. So we've got Chris and Ali. I think we've got everyone there. Right. So item 6, move to public question time. Any members of the public wish to raise any questions?
Chair, if I may, I've had a request from a Mr. Graham Allen to have a letter read out on his behalf.
Yeah, that's fine. If you go ahead, Daryl.
Thank you, Chair. So it's, dear members of the board, I would like to submit the following to this committee meeting. Some members of the committee here are aware that this year, my first year of owning a boat and enjoying the lovely scenery of the estuary, has been disappointing to discover the high crime of theft of vessels and equipment taken from them. Myself, I've had to report 3 crimes, theft and criminal damage. Becoming aware and being informed by other boat owners, it seems crime is fairly common. It would appear that the present security is ineffective, with patrols not covering every day. It'd be interesting to know of any powers these patrols have, and if there has been anyone detained or questioned. I would like to propose that a CCTV camera be erected at New Bridge. Today's technology makes it achievable, act as a deterrent, may cut the crime figures, and be cost effective in the long run and reduce insurance costs. I have the support from Charlton Parish Council and Kingsbridge Estuary Boat Club and some members of this committee. I hope this proposal meets the approval of this committee and the camera is installed by next season. Yours, Graham Allen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darryl. Well, that's slightly. I mean, he's been in contact with me, so I did know about that. I think unless anyone's got something to say now, we can cover that in the in item 12, 4.3, which is harbour security. So otherwise, we'll move on from that, and hopefully, Mr. Allen may be attending, watching this, so he may pick up on that. But we'll see. Any more public participation?
I'm not aware of anything, Chair.
No. Okay, thank you, Darryl. In which case, we shall move on to feedback from Harbour community forums. Who would like to go first?
Chairman, if I can, on behalf of the Salcombe and Kingsbridge Estuary Conservation Forum, unfortunately COVID restrictions have prevented that forum from meeting, but I do note that Nigel Mortimer, the Estuaries officer, is attending today, so may be able to give an update on any matters pertaining to that forum.
Right. Hi, Nigel. Did you want to make any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, in the spring, we sent out a sort of e-coms to the wider membership, and this autumn we're hoping to do a Zoom round the table like meeting and a separate event, some kind of talk about some matter that will be of interest to the forum.
Great. That sounds good. Well, thank you for that, Nigel, and appreciate these are strange times, so we can't all meet up. South Devon and Channel fishermen, shell fishermen. Oh. Is that Ian? Was that you trying to say something? Have we lost Ian, or is it not working? Should we move on to the Kingsbridge and Salcombe Marine Business Forum? Is that you, Ali?
Yeah, hi, Ali speaking here. Just a quick one. We obviously this in later in this report. Keen to know the update on the bats and units, the industry units there, and also just as a statement from a lot of small base marine businesses in Salcombe and Kingsbridge. We live on a feast and famine, and the small businesses are struggling because we possibly only had 2 to 3 months income for the whole year. So a lot of us are struggling to get through the winter, and that's it really.
Yeah, thank you, Ali, and I think that we will on the second point there that you raised, we will be no doubt that will come up during the budget and fees and charges discussion. Right, so I've got Kingsbridge Estuary Boat Club.
I've nothing to report on that. I haven't heard from them.
No, okay, Hugh. Well, I'm sure it's the same as with many, and likewise with East Portlemouth. Nothing to report from East Portlemouth. We'll go back to Ian if he's. Have we lost Ian, or is he unable to communicate with us? Ian, can you hear us? Okay, yeah, Cam, if you could come in, I think Ian's typing something as well. But Cam, yeah, if you come in, and then if there's any more to add, Ian, if you see anything that's missing, then come in, or otherwise we can bring you in at a later stage once communications have been refound. So Cam, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon all. I shall do an update on Ian's behalf. The fishing industry did a remarkable job, really, in Salcombe to keep going throughout COVID, and I know we brought an update in our July meeting. Prices have been fluctuating as we are very determined on the China market. However, it's been a good sign. All of our fleet have been able to maintain fishing. The quay itself, we organised a weekend in August to clear a lot of the build-up of various fishing paraphernalia, and that's worked well. We've had little to no incidents on the quay throughout the summer, with the exception of a Portuguese lorry driver modifying a lamp post, but was rectified and sorted swiftly and reinstated. We are continuing to do little updates as best we can. For example, just updating the streetlights to LED lights for a lot of the crews who are packing the crab off to China in the early hours of the morning to meet the flight times has made their health and safety operation of the slipway much easier. I think from a funding side of things, that stream is still ongoing. The price is still relatively low compared to last year, but is manageable, and the guys are doing well. So I haven't really got anything else to report. We have some fendering that we need to adapt for the fishermen on the electric davit berth, and we've been working hard to achieve the options of power still for any sort of noise complaints that have been next to none this year for the operation of the quay throughout the busy peak periods. It was a polarity issue with some European lorries having a different polarity, so we've installed a switch and hopefully seems to be a bit better. So that's my update. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cam. Ian, I know you can hear, but we can't hear you. Most unfortunate. If you do want to add anything, just type it in the message board there, or if you come back in at some point, then please do, if you suddenly find your voice again.
Can you hear me now, Julian?
Yes, we can, Ian. You're with us.
All right. I've turned it off and turned it back on again. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, Cam's given you the report. I missed most of it because I was rebooting, but I'm sure he's given you a very comprehensive report on it all. Okay. Sorry about that.
Excellent. Well, look, good to have you back with us. Right, in which case that's item 7. We shall move on to item 8, budget. So who's leading? Is that Cam or Pauline?
I'm happy to.
Pauline, yeah, if you don't mind, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay,
Thanks,
happy to
Pauline.
introduce, Chair, no problem. So this report looks at setting the Harbour budget for next year for 2021-22. Members will note that the board meeting was delayed from September to give us as much management information as possible from the current year to help inform next year's budget. Needless to say, it's been a very difficult year for all. Just really for clarification, in terms of next year's budget, we've assumed that income streams will return to normal, but this is obviously very hard to predict at this stage. As members are aware, there is a legal requirement to set a balanced budget. The current shortfall that we're projecting for next year is £44,000. The reasons for this are broken down in detail in the report, but mainly relate to inflation and annual increments. I just confirm any areas of growth have been kept to an absolute minimum in the current environment. Members will note there are 3 appendices to the report, which start on page 15 of the agenda. Appendix A sets out the movement in the revenue budget for 21-22. Appendix B looks at the harbour reserves, and the loans outstanding, and provides a projection on reserve balances for March 2021 and also March 2022. And finally, Appendix C shows the payments between South Hams and the Harbour to aid transparency, which I know is something that members have requested in the past. So I provided that for the budget paper as well, because I thought then you've got the whole picture, if you like. In addition, in Appendix A, you can see that the current forecast for this financial year is a shortfall of £56,600, which is a direct result of the pandemic. It should be noted, I think, that this is a significant improvement to what's been previously forecast, and this shortfall can be met from the General Reserve in 2021. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Pauline. Excellent work. Thank you so much again. Members, any questions to Pauline? No, I'm not seeing anything in there. So basically, sorry, did someone want to come in?
Yeah, just wondering, obviously there's assumptions in the budget that then indicate the next agenda item, which is fee increases. So I'm not sure how you're proposing.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll take this as the benchmark, and then in the next item, the fees and charges, then that's where we can change things around a bit.
Because I suppose where I am, Julian, is the budget per se is fine, with the exception of the commitments to reserves, because those are dependent on the next discussion. Yeah. So the underlying budget, I'm saying I don't have an issue with, but the commitment to reserves is totally dependent on the subsequent discussions.
Yeah, no, agreed, Mark. So what we will do is so that the board recommends to council that the proposed set out within the report is approved, and maybe we could just put a little add on there, subject to agreement of fees and charges.
Julian, can I ask a question?
Yes, Malcolm, press on.
In relation to Appendix B, we have no information about the reserves which are held in the Council Marine and Infrastructure Reserve. Would it be appropriate for us to know how much money is actually held in this reserve account?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly appropriate. I mean, we do know how. It's not in these papers. We have it in other council papers. I think it's in the region of about around 250,000.
I can answer that, Chair, if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. Yes, please.
Yeah. So as at the end of March 2020, the balance on the Marine Infrastructure Reserve was £268,000, of which £200,000 has been earmarked already, which leaves a balance of 67,000 outstanding, uncommitted, if you like.
Can I ask what the 200,000 is committed for, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's for the Harbour workshop, I think.
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Sorry, it's for the
Harbour workshop.
Oh, the Harbour workshop. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm. Mark, have you seen we've just added on subject to the subsequent agreement of the recommended fees and charges? Are you happy with that?
I don't know whether it's maybe one for others to comment from whether legally that makes it right, or whether we should approve the fees and charges first and then come back and vote on this afterwards, when we can actually vote on approving the actual number.
Yeah, it's always a sort of chicken and egg situation here. The problem that we have is that if we agree fees and charges, that's assuming that we've accepted what the inflationary pressures are on the services i.e. item 8. So because we've had this discussion before where we've had 9 first and then 8, and then it was said, well, that seems a bit ridiculous because you're agreeing that what the increase in charges should be before you've agreed what the budget should be. So I think what I would say is that item 8, taking out any of the headline figure is that basically we've got a shortfall of 44,000. And then item 9 will be how are we going to overcome that shortfall?
Well, not particularly, Julian, because if we overcome it by not putting 163,000 into reserves and only 119, then we have no shortfall to take into item 9.
Yeah, I mean, it's a moot point, isn't it? It's a moot point, isn't it? I mean, I mean, this is the amounts that we take out of reserves on an annual basis. We take out of the revenue account into reserves on an annual basis. So, in order to cut the shortfall, we reduce the amount that we take out. I mean, it would be the same as if you said, well, we're going to spend less money on, maintenance or something.
No, I don't think it would, Julie, because I think if at point 8 we agreed to only take 119,000 out of reserves, then there is no debate about the COVID implications on people and what we should do in relation to fee increases, because there is no shortfall. So no, it's not a moot point at all. It's a fundamental point, because we don't then carry forward a 44,000 deficit. So if we only take 100.
Okay, Mark. We'll put it like this then. How do you suggest that we come up with the fees and charges when we don't know what the shortfall may or may not be?
Well.
See, this is what I'm saying, why it's a chicken and egg situation.
I accept it is. So I'm saying, well, we could have a discussion now that says we only put 119,000 into reserves this year.
Well, and that's where I think that the extra bit of the recommendation, subject to the subsequent agreement of the recommended fees and charges, item 9.
The wording doesn't work for me. I'd happily approve the budget without anything going into reserves, and then we agree the reserves when we've agreed the fees and charges. That works.
Members, any other thoughts on this?
Keep silence. I suspect it's dangerous on a pin stuff, isn't it? It really depends on the way that the council prefers its business done. These are only recommendations to council, so that by the time they get there, they'll see what's happened in item 9. It's not a decision in that sense.
That's very true, Hugh. I mean, I think the point that Mark's making, and I do take it on board, is that if we agree this budget, then we're agreeing the amount that's being transferred into reserves. And then if we then go into the fees and charges, then we can't change what we've already agreed in the budget. What I'm suggesting is that with those extra words on the end, is that we, that basically item 9 will override item 8. It's all getting a bit tautological. Anyway, Judy's asked if Daryl can help out. And Daryl, any thoughts?
As you say, Chair, it's a classic chicken and egg annually, isn't it? I mean, we've gone both ways around, and when me and Mrs. Henstock said about which way we should structure the agenda, we thought the budget should go first this time round. I mean, at this moment in time, we've got no proposal on the table, which has been proposed and seconded. I mean, we've come up with some wording which reflected your points, Chair, and taken on Mr. Taylor's point about, subject to the issue of transfers to reserves being dealt with at item 9. It's where the meeting wants to take it, really, but it's that classic chicken and egg, as you allude to, Chair.
Right, members, over to you. There is a recommendation up before us. What would you like to do? Just a couple of people typing.
whilst those members are typing, Chair, it goes up at the minute we don't have a motion on the table, which has been seconded anyway.
No, that's can we?
Well, the other way is just simply to note the proposed budget and recommend it if we want to when we do the fees and charges.
Yep, that's Hugh. I mean, how's that? Yeah, that's an idea, isn't it, Hugh?
Well,
the board notes the proposed. So it doesn't. We're not recommending or anything.
Yes.
Subject to this subsequent agreement and then on 9, because as Richard says, in a way, we do sort of want to do them both together, but.
So we note at this stage and then make a recommendation at the next.
Mark, are you happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's excellent. Right.
I'll propose it if that helps.
Yeah, lovely.
Do you want me to second it, Hugh?
Lovely.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So the budget is noted. I think that may have solved it for the next subsequent years as well. That we know.
Oh, dearie me.
We've noted it, and then we'll move on to the substantive debate really about it in item 9. So that's been proposed and seconded. Unless anyone's against that, I'm going to assume that we're all for it. So I'll wait. If you are against it, shout out now, or if you could write in the message box.
There's nobody typing, Chair. Therefore, we'll assume that recognition to note at this stage is unanimously carried. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed, members. Right, item 9. So this is where we can get into the debate proper. Cam, did you want to introduce this?
Yes.
And we've got it all in front of us. We've discussed it at the workshop, but now we will have the public debate. Okay, so over
Thank you,
to
Julian.
Cam.
Yeah. No. Thank you very much. I will just go through the paper for the benefit of that the recommendation for the proposed charges to the council set out in Appendix 1 for implementation on the 1st of April 2021. Obviously, due to our year this year, we've been able to, well, we've been fortunate enough, I would have thought, to form these fees and charges for next year based on a general year. Now, that being said, we could have a much busier year next year with staycations, etc. But we do have to consider the fact that there could be further restrictions next year, leading us to a loss of income. So we've shot down the middle, but important both sides to realise that we could plus or minus. Now, the way that we have achieved our 44,000 gap is with the implementation of the new harbour dues for residents last year. That has worked really well this year, and as many of you know, the implementation was across the board, but developed the horsepower part of the tariff, including as well as the length. Sorry. There were many winners and many losers of that, but we feel the benchmark has now been set, and operationally our team has done a great job in recovering those dues, but also in educating, discussing, going through the pros and cons of the various harbour users. With the pandemic in mind and a sort of COVID recovery next year, we realised that, you know, no matter what harbour user it is, everyone somewhere along the line has felt the pinch of COVID, ourselves included. So in the interest of trying to be as broad as we possibly can, we have increased the length per metre, but maintained the horsepower figure as the same as last year. So in essence, every harbour user will have a smaller increase to find the shortfall within the harbour dues, And lower down, you'll see that's reflected in the mooring hire, where there is a small increase of 4% to the annual moorings within the harbour. It's important to note that the casual dues for visitors has remained as a 0 increase. Now, that is twofold. One, we want our visiting yachts to continue to come into the harbour, but also from an operational level, the tariffs at the moment we've set at solid round numbers, and it's far easier to manage, explain and sell to our visitors. If there were any other permutations, or if there are any further questions, then I would say at this point, now's the time to discuss anything going forward, Julian.
Thank you very much, Cam. Right. Members, I should say that we did discuss this at the workshop, but for the sake of transparency, if there are points that you want to bring up, don't assume that members of the public will know that already. Mark, I see that you've come up with a I see that you've come up with another proposal. So if you would just like to speak on that for a couple of minutes, and see what and see what other members think.
Okay, so I think for the workshop there were 3 potential alternative views. Not saying any of them had significant support, but just to reflect those, I think, and sort of taking them in reverse order. One was the establishment of either a mandate or a fund, or some form of hardship discretionary fund, where the harbour master could apply, some discretion, and actually us within the budget identifying a fund in which he could have that to work to. The other was looking at some of the commercial businesses and relaxing the increases in relation to the commercial businesses to reflect COVID past and future hardship. And the third one, which is the one I feel passionately about, is that this budget doesn't reflect the realities of a COVID world, and actually we are perfectly able to modify assumptions on reserves policy and not go for an increase at all this year, and that would then universally support people in hardship. And okay, people who weren't in hardship would benefit, but as Cameron has identified, the increases per individual have been relatively small. So if someone who has had unaffected by COVID doesn't have a £30 increase, well, it's not the end of the world. But for those people that are in hardship, I think it is. So I look at the budget. Other than rents, I don't see any identified savings. So it doesn't feel to me like we've sweated the expenditure to get savings, and that we have increases that need to be covered. And I think we can totally afford not to put £163,000 into reserves this year, but to put £119,000 in. And if that means a pontoon life has to be 42 years, not 40 years, so be it, in a COVID world. So I strongly support and would like a resolution around a reduction in contribution to reserves of £44,000 and no increase.
Thank you, Mark. So, members, over to you. I mean, obviously that's not a single recommendation, because I think there are 2 mutually exclusive recommendations there. So 1 and 2 you can't have both of them. You can have one or the other. Number 3, as you've written them down, Mark, that can be in addition to or not at all. But members, over to you now. Really, what your thoughts are on Mark's proposals.
Can I just ask, Chair, if there's a seconder as well at the same time, please?
Yeah, Darryl. At the moment, I don't think that is a proposal as it is. So I prefer if we could just have a discussion on those 3 particular issues, because number 1 and number 2 they're different. You can have one or the other, but you can't have them both. So let's see what members have to say about those 3 ideas that Mark has thrown into the ring.
Chairman, I would be very cautious about not paying money into reserves. I think there may be misunderstanding. I'm sure they're not within the board, but there may be more widely a misunderstanding about what reserves are. They're not sort of sums of money that we keep behind in order to pay some shareholders or whatever. That what they represent is money that is budgeted for future years when we tend to have very large capital charges, or for instance for dredging, which is not, and we need to save up, otherwise we can't actually run the harbour. And I agree that, for instance, it might be possible, I would take Mark's line, to squeeze a pontoon 2 years on, but it might equally be that that pontoon will fail 2 years early. So we don't know what exactly when we'll need the reserves, but we now have a pretty good idea. And we have taken some care in previous years to phase capital expenditure so it doesn't all fall in the same year, because when we set up the current pontoons, a lot of them were actually, they were much the same age. So we've taken care to spread that. We've taken care to manage the reserves to a level that doesn't represent a huge charge in each year, and which does enable us to keep the harbour working at a proper level for safety and a proper standard, so that it's a good quality harbour. So I'm extremely resistant to cutting the money that we're putting aside for expenditure for capital projects in future years, which we call reserves.
Yeah, thank you, Hugh. I've got Mark Long.
Julian?
Hello. Yeah, and then Malcolm, then you afterwards.
Thank you, Chairman. I would hope that the board can agree quite easily with the idea of a hardship fund, which would be under the discretion, given the circumstances that we're in, and because we don't know where things are going to go next year. But obviously, if we did have a hardship fund at the discretion of the harbour master, it would need clear process and requirements to back it up to ensure that it's fair. But I think it is something that, as a board, that we could consider, and I think could quite easily be funded from current reserves or future reserves. And I would like to sort of make that as one proposal, that we agree to the setting up or the agreement to a hardship fund that can be operated by the harbour master.
Thanks, Mark. What are your views on the reducing the amount we pay into reserves this year?
I think there's considerable argument for a reduction in some form, in some way, of reducing, possibly to reduce the increase, because I think there may be hardship by sort of local people that we don't know about yet, and I think it is a very difficult situation to be in. I think we should understand that obviously the reserves are not potentially the total amount that would be required for any particular project. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, that we were considering building up the reserves that they would be a full cost reserve for replacement of pontoons. I think there was always an element of borrowing behind that. So I think a partial or a midway point of taking some out of reserves, because we do have reasonably healthy reserves at the moment, and I think that would be an approach, and I think everybody is having to dip into reserves at the moment.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mark. Malcolm.
Yes, I can't help feeling we'd all feel great sympathy for a hardship fund and for commercial businesses, and I'm sure we would all like to reduce the harbour fees. But my understanding is that the board has to set what it calls a neutral budget, and presumably that involves a long-term issue. And I don't see as the Harbour Board as being a charity. It's not a charity as such. it is a board in terms of maintaining the estuary. So in terms of the Hardship Fund, which I think is, of course, a lovely idea, and we'd all have a lot of sympathy for it, but I think that would put the harbour master under unnecessary pressure. Salcombe is a local place, and he would have to be making very, very difficult decisions about allocating certain sums of money. And I don't think it's the sort of responsibility that the Harbour Board should have to place on the harbour master. So although it's a lovely idea, I think it will have unintended consequences and put the harbour master in a very difficult position. In relation to commercial businesses, I presume Southamptons have their own way of helping businesses, and I think they've been dishing out large sums of money over the COVID times. And so really that's the job of the Southampton District Council and not the Harbour Board. And finally, the issue is Mark doesn't think that these the proposals that are in front of us reflect COVID realities. Well, COVID realities, we don't know where we're going, but I think the balanced approach, which is a plus or minus approach in the medium, is the right approach. And although we might like to be generous, I think the proposal as it stands is not unreasonable. That's it.
Thank you, Malcolm. Richard.
Yeah, Chairman. I had a chance to go out in fresh air and think about after we had the talk this morning, which I thought was very helpful on the decision-making process now. And after I'd listened to Cam when he came back and explained why he thought the budget was where it should be, and I've had a look at it, and as far as I can see, I know things are tough for some, but from what he was saying, we're not all losers on the estuary. And I'm inclined to agree with Malcolm, who's just spoken now, that I think that we have to have a balanced budget, whether we have a hardship fund or not, and the difficulties of running that. I think it would be a good idea, but I also hear what he says on that, putting Cam in a difficult position. Perhaps whether Cam wants to comment on that or not. But as things stand at the moment, I would be content to go along with the recommendation.
Julian, I'm happy to comment now if that's appropriate.
Yeah, yes, please, Cam, and thank you, Richard. Yes, Cam, if you'd like to come in there.
Richard, Malcolm, thank you for your comments in relation to the hardship fund, and no, it hadn't actually dawned on me. Your comments, however, like every decision that's made here, it's done via committee within our own management team. However, the way I would see if we were successful in setting this fund up is that it would form part of a collective of board members as well. So it wouldn't just be me handing out cash to the next person who walks through the door with their bottom lip. It would be a evidence-based decision with a small working party of designated board members to form a final decision. Whether this plays out or not, that's certainly how I would see the only legitimate and comfy way going forward. But thank you for your comments.
Thanks, Cam. And just to clarify, I mean, when we talk about hardship fund, that is purely for the businesses.
Correct.
Yeah, not for leisure users.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
There's a deep silence.
No, sorry, Hugh. I was just reading what Ali had put. But yeah, no, Hugh, if you want to come in, that would be good.
Well, I mean, presumably the point about the hardship fund is it would be a method for allaying the fees, charges, and whatever, rather than simply supporting businesses which, in wider ways, And if a sum of money aside enables people to pay later or defer or whatever, then that would be an obvious use for it, and I can see some sense in having it.
Thank you, Hugh, as all the day. Yeah, thank you for that, Hugh. And if members can see what Chris has put, as Chris Brooke has put in the messaging there, is that basically we do have a lot of information about the businesses already, and if we had a hardship fund, that would be that. So that it would have to be evidence-based and transparent. Chris, when you said I'm in agreement with Hugh and Malcolm, Hugh seemed to be in favour of the hardship fund or elements of it, but Malcolm was not.
I was just typing that as Hugh put it, put his other point across. Sorry. What Hugh was saying initially, I was in total agreement with regards to the hardship fund. What Malcolm was saying, SHDC have put a vast sum of money out there for marine businesses, which I personally have received, and it's helped massively and put us in a good trading position. And then obviously him saying about what I was in agreement with was his point towards what the harbour master has to deal with if we just made it kind of like an open book situation. But if it's done by like a case by case thing, or for people that are in genuine hardship that potentially haven't had anything from the government to try and prop them up, then that could be really good. But then Hugh was also saying about helping defer payments and things like that. So there's quite a few points towards a hardship fund where it could be beneficial, but obviously not too much for the harbour master as well to deal with.
Right. Okay, so we've had quite a lot of debate there on the hardship fund, and you can see Mark Long's latest thing that the hardship fund would covering just the extra harbour costs, and it would be on a case by case basis and a group, and that it would have to be evidence based. Okay. Mark Taylor, did you want to come back in?
Not massively. Obviously, listening to.
Okay, that's fine. Mark, don't worry. It's only
listening to what colleagues say and hearing what colleagues say. Obviously, I have fundamentally different views, which is fine.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Mark. Absolutely, and you know, of course, I mean that's what we want. We want a diverse set of views. Really, hopefully, we can come to some kind of consensus. You know, at some point. Richard, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, Julian, I think I do, because I don't know what, I mean, I think we've heard from most people what they want. I don't know what you think. I know you're chairing it, but I've come to the point where I would move the recommendation as is, as long as we can put some money together for hardship fund to be decided, of course, but I would formally move that recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Yeah, I mean, you've asked for my views. I'll give you my views. Personally, I prefer to see fees and charges to go up gradually than to go up in leaps and bounds. So I think we should stick with the recommendations as they are. But I do think the idea of a hardship fund is useful specifically for businesses in the estuary. I take on board what people say about the extra work that might put on Cam and his team, but then in a funny sort of way, much of that work has already been done because they've already applied for discretionary grants. I should just add that the discretionary grants that businesses have had across the South Hands is grant money from government that we have, as a district council, we have then handed out. So you know, what we're saying here is something extra as a harbour that we feel that we need to support some of our marine businesses, which are crucial to the functioning of the harbour, but may, for some reason, and they are different for each business, may have been so badly affected by COVID. The other thing I like about a hardship fund rather than a across the board is that it's much more targeted, so that we can say these businesses have suffered and this is why, and this is, we can see from their books, this is why they've suffered, whereas others may have actually done okay from it for whatever reasons. Anyway, so that's my view. So what I would do is I support the recommendations as they stand. I won't. I don't think I should as chair. I know Richard has proposed it. You didn't add an extra because as they stand, as you propose, there isn't anything about a hardship fund in there, Richard. You may want to add that in.
Can I come in then, Chair? I was going to do that if Councillor Foss managed to get a second. I was going to type it up as a motion on the table.
Okay, and then Cam, you wanted to say something, and then I presume also that Mark Taylor, you would like to make a propose something else as well.
Well, Julian, probably
yeah.
not, because listening to the views of colleagues,
yeah,
I don't think any proposal I make will go through. So I don't think we need to go to the pain of creating a something to vote on, unless other colleagues are going to surprise me. What I'm hearing is the colleagues are pretty confident and comfortable with the proposal that is on the table. So I don't think we need to put another proposal just for it to be voted down. Yeah.
Okay, Mark. Fair enough. I mean, I think you're reading it right. But I mean, we are putting in this hardship fund, which Daryl's just typing up now. I see Daniel Brown is seconding the proposal. Can I just say that I'm sure that it will be, but it will be reflected in the minutes. Mark Taylor's concerns about the budget and the alternative. I think it should be seen that we discussed an alternative, that we reduced the payment to reserves, but during discussions it appeared that the majority were not supportive of that, if that's possible.
I'll ensure that's in, Chair. Thank you.
Julian, is it just possible just to get a bit of clarification just for ourselves with regard to the hardship fund? The way I envisage that working, and again would be interested in comments from members, is that the fund isn't a pot of gold that we issue back out. It is simply if a business has issues directly related to COVID that can't pay their invoice, that invoice is discussed, reduced, or payment plans, etc., etc. So we can put a nominal figure against it. However, what will be determined in the balance sheet is, harbour dues might be reduced by that amount, or moorings might be reduced by that amount, or landing fees might be reduced by that amount, depending on what scenario the businesses come to us in. So that's how I understand it. Is it will be essentially an invoice adaptation other than the money being handed out. Is that correct?
That's certainly how I saw it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think the important thing that we have to have in here is the fact that the increase would go in, so that if we then pay somebody back, that next year, if there is an increase on top of this, the increase that we might agree now, I'm sorry, this all sounds a bit convoluted, that's still in there. What I don't want to do is for suddenly that some people end up paying less because of it. So it would be a refund of the fees, extra fees and charges that they would have had to pay this year in order to help them through. Is that in agreement?
Chairman, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think agree with what Cameron has just explained. Yeah, Mark's with that, Mark Long. So I probably just confused it even more. So forget about what I said. Although thanks for agreeing with me, Mark. Right.
We could take the detail of a hardship fund at the next meeting, Chairman.
I think that would be useful. I think that would be very useful. We just
put a notional 10k in for now, which needs to be in, I think.
You think we need to put an amount in there?
I think we need an amount which is a limit as much as anything.
Okay.
And to be paid out of reserves, so therefore it doesn't need to change the fees very much at all. And then we could discuss. We could take a paper, if necessary, pink, at the next meeting to just as how that might work, and then we'll all have some constructive thoughts by then.
Okay. How do people feel about that? So, subject to the establishment of a hardship fund of £10,000 funded from the general reserve. Yeah. That would be up to £10,000. Reserve. And then I think so, and then it's got with delegated authority being given to the harbour master in consultation with the.
Well, I would just say with details to be discussed at the next meeting.
Yeah. So rather than delegated authority.
Yes, just delete all that, Darryl. It's save you the typing.
That's fine. Thank you. Can I just check Councillors Foss and Brown are happy with that as the original proposers?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yep, happy with that, Darryl.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm content with that.
Thank you, Richard. I see Judy would just quickly like to ask a question. Judy, welcome.
Hello, Julian. Good afternoon, everybody. Julian, I'd just like to be certain that such a fund is within the powers of the Harbour Board to set up before you actually vote to do it.
Okay, well,
within the legal powers, that's all. Because it strikes me it could be ultra vires. I don't know, and it's because I don't know that I'm asking the question.
No, I think that's a fair point. I mean, there may be that I'm sure we can give a certain amount to businesses, but you're absolutely right that we couldn't be in a position whereby we give one business so much that it becomes, it's anti-competitive, or whatever they call it. I mean, also the other thing, Judy, is we're not actually passing. We're recommending that the council does it. So we might be passing the problem on to you. Chris, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, and actually, I think you've hit the point there, which is that this would be a recommendation on to council, and there's been some conversations going on in the background with various officers. We think, Chairman and Leader, that this is something that we could set up that wouldn't be ultra vires, so long as the council then approved it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, okay, members. Right, so we've got a recommendation before you. That is being proposed by Richard and seconded by Dan. Members, any of those who oppose or want to abstain, please message it or say it out. Mark, I can see. Yeah, so Mark's voting against that. Yeah, thank you, Mark. Any other members wishing to vote against that? That's any. So, any members wishing to abstain?
Thank you, Chair. There's nobody typing. Should we assume that recommendation is carried by 9 votes to 1?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, members.
Well, the next thing, Julian, is this is Darryl's point. Do we now agree the budget?
Quite correct, Mr. Marriage.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I thought we've noted it, haven't we?
We've noted the budget. Do we need to agree? That was the point I wanted to raise with Darryl.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful for the board today to put an approval now on the back of that, Chair, to the next council meeting, so it approves as a result of the fees and charges decision.
Okay, so we go back to item 8. I thought we'd managed to get away from this, but back to item 8, and I don't know if we're allowed to do this, but anyway, it would appear that so where we've got notes is recommends to council. approval of the proposed asset. Okay, so could I have a proposer and a seconder for that recommendation for item 8? It's a new recommendation. I thought we had to wait 6 months before we could do another one.
Happy to propose.
Thank you, Hugh. Have I got a seconder for that? Well, Ian's come in, so if you're all right seconding that, Ian, Hugh's proposed it.
Yeah, no problem at all. Quite happy to second it.
Thanks, Ian. So that's been seconded. Mark is voting against the budget again. Any other members wish to abstain or vote against the budget?
There's nobody typing, Chair. And just as these 2 items are coming to an end, I think we'll reflect on this a bit, Chair, and I think we'll have the 2 items combined into one agenda item in the future with separate parts of recommendations. That might help the flow of the meeting.
Agreed. Excellent. So at least we've decided that as well. Okay, well, thank you very much, members. So we will now move on to item 10, which is enforcement bylaws and harbour directions. I don't know who wants to lead on this. I mean, Hugh, did you want to make a few comments?
Well,
as the main author of the amendments.
Chairman, there is a paper about it which sets out some of the thinking. We needed a new format to go on the website. We needed to clarify really the powers of the harbour master. There isn't a change of policy in this paper. It just makes clear what the harbour master, the powers the harbour master can exercise on behalf of the harbour authority. In particular, that if someone infringes one of the bylaws and a decision is taken by the council solicitor not to prosecute, then it is up to the harbour authority does have the power to deny facilities to that person for that vessel for a certain length of time. So the boat can be will have to be withdrawn from the harbour or not be allowed to use some of the facilities like the slip and so on. So there are sanctions that can be applied short of prosecution, and that is an important position to have set out. But it's been like this since our last enforcement policy in 2013. So this really clarifies it. The only substantive difference in this new draft is in 5.2, where the appeal procedure has been strengthened. So the appeal procedure is now conducted by the council, not by the chairman of the board, who might have been consulted at some stage about the infringement, and which therefore it would have been a weakness in the procedures. I think that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Hugh, and just to put on public record, my thanks to you and all others involved in this redrawing. Although it's not exactly the most sexy, were absolutely crucial to the smooth running of the harbour. So thank you. Right, members, you've got a recommendation before you. Sorry, if anyone else wanted to comment. No, I'm not seeing that. So we've got a recommendation before you. Could I have a proposer and seconder for the recommendation as it is up on the board?
I'll propose, Mr. Chairman.
So that's Mark Long proposed, and Mark Taylor, you happy to second? Yeah, okay, I'm assuming that, or Daniel, one of those two. Okay, so any against or abstaining? No.
Nobody typing there, Chair.
Thank you, Darryl. So thank you, members. So assume that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Right. Item 11. I'm not going to use item 11 at the moment unless we have to when we talk about the dredging. So I'd just like to move straight on to item 12. And Cam, over to you. We can move through the items. And obviously when you come to the item 4.2 dredging, it's only the figures really that are commercially sensitive. So if members want to discuss that, we will have to go into part 2. Otherwise, with that, Cam, over to you.
Thank you, Julian. Right, I'll go through the main body of the report, and again, if dredging comes up, it figures-wise comes up. So this is the standing agenda item of our Harbour Master's report for this time of year. What it has done is really highlight where we've been discussing our shortfall, of where that shortfall has come from. And if you look in Appendix 1 on page 45, the main areas of our sort of shortfall have become from our harbour dues visiting yachts, deep water mooring visiting yachts. We're seeing sort of 35 almost loss of income there. Visitor foreshore, again around 11.5. We were absolutely jam-packed full for July, August, and actually most of September. But once you hit that capacity, you just can't make up the 3 months we had zero from these tariffs. Our overnight town landings, we improved as September came through. I mean, the majority of that income came in sort of late August, early September. We actually found the town this year was proving challenging with behaviour overnight, and it was discouraging some of our visiting yachts from being alongside from sort of nuisance noise, etc. So those figures are looking a bit healthier now, but still a drop in line. Positive, our White Strand overflow pontoon, again, we increased that in the budget last year by another £5 increment, and historically we've been doing that every 2 years. So next year is the second year of that increment. That's again a victim of our own success, really. It's a very busy pontoon, and especially in a concentrated time of July and August, our seasonal staff worked tirelessly to try and manage that and keep the navigable channel clear, but also to accommodate everyone, so no one was turned away. Our boat parking, again, another fund that's managed by us on behalf of us. We took a hit there with just no trade for 3 months, but again, a remarkable amount was recovered in essentially a sort of 12-week block period. Again, trailer parking, we were super vigilant on the trailer parking this year, and it just demonstrates that area is only at capacity for those bulk 8 weeks of the season. So I'll move us now on to Appendix 2, page 47. This is just a snapshot of what our waiting lists are looking like, and again, demand has increased since I've started to do these every year. They're not massive increases, but they're very healthy. So our deep water waiting list, 360 berths, we've got a 60% demand on. Again, foreshore stayed about the same. Pontoons are increasing. Residence compound is always increasing, and that these PIs will be part of the development and master plan of Batson going forward, and looking at how we can accommodate our demands and needs. Any questions on waiting lists so far? Then please, I'll rattle through, and we'll take questions at the end. Finally is just again snapshot review of our incident log, and I will go on to the CCTV with our security later on in the paper, but I'll just try and pick some of the middle points. I mean, the good ones are all positive. Damage to customers' boats. We did obviously had a very congested harbour this year at points, and I think Julian, you mentioned earlier, every day was like a bank holiday, so there were some trafficking errors, but a big spike in sort of boat to boat contact. I think potentially, again, we were being super vigilant on recording things this year. We had a lot of staff on the water keeping an eye on bits and pieces. Another one, our harbour truck took a bump at Southpool trying to do a 78-point turn. Again, just superficial, but needed to be logged. Illegally moored and towed boats. I wouldn't like to say that that's particularly down, but this year we were sensitive to the fact that everyone was trying to cram themselves into a fairly limited space and had not had the opportunity to visit in all times of the year. So we tried to be an educating force as much as an enforcement force, and that possibly reflects that. Only navigation incident to note, we had the storms in early August, and we had one of our navigational marks fail. The shackle parted at the entrance to the harbour, but again, the guys did a great job in turning that round, reinstated, and caught a weather window with our mooring barge around a slack tide to get that reinstated within 48 hours. Worth just getting down to our big hitters at the bottom. Speeding, we've been as hot as we can be on speeding this year. Myself, Marcus and Phil have been vastly tied to desks this year in trying to produce papers like this, but also keeping on top of our finances and COVID and keeping our staff safe with various risk assessments and managing how we're going through the season. We would have all liked to have been out there a bit more, but we did find in the early parts of the season, with the pub at Southpool being shut, there was an increased amount of traffic transiting between Kingsbridge and Salcombe. That has led to going back to our enforcement policy, probably some stage 1 and stage 2 stuff, and the police being involved with 2 separate occasions of antisocial behaviour. Swimming, part of a port roundup with Southwest Regional Ports. We have a huge amount of swimming occurrences, and we've only listed 5 here. They were really the sort of 5 dangerous ones where immediate recovery from the water and back ashore. It's something that seems to be on the up. A lot of wild swimming seems to be going on. A time and a place for it. Probably not the middle of Batson Creek, whilst you've got commercial fishing boats, hire boats, ferries, etc., etc. Theft I'll leave and go on to in more detail, because I think that has a direct COVID relationship, and I'll go more into it just further down into the paper. Any questions at that point on the performance indicators, Chair?
Thanks, Cam. Members, any questions?
Julian, Mark here. Can I just have a question?
Yeah. Far away, Mark.
Cam, just to the swimming, and this is looking forward really to preventative. I think, as you say, I think everywhere we've seen a massive increase in recreational open water swimming. And I'm just wondering about signage and information, sort of the education of swimmers and of boat users looking to next season. So just flag that as something we may want to think about, because I don't see it going away.
No, thank you, Mark. It's actually something that we brought up with the RNLI lifeguards, because they're seeing a huge amount of open swimmers as well. And I think we need to look at our signage in general. We're really good at our key launch points, but our launch points are designed around boats on trailers. But actually, our information signposting for swimmers and paddleboarders that can rock up in a car and park at North Sands and go afloat, and that's something we're probably a little bit out of date on. So absolutely, more about the what the do's and don'ts are. Boat lanes are brilliant until people walk straight past them and do the opposite. So it's certainly on our agenda for overwintering, which probably was concentrated more on sort of paddleboards and the remote access points to the harbour. But noted, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's something definitely possibly, around sort of Mill Bay as well. The boats. And
that's right, Julian.
Mix, yeah. But yeah, something maybe we can look at a future meeting. Any more on the performance indicators? Can't see anyone coming in there, in which case we'll move on to the item 4, well, not item, it says number 4 in item number 12.
Thanks, Julian. Yeah, so just again, a general update. We've obviously, with all things this year, our mooring maintenance dive contract is pretty much ready to go now. That will go out hopefully before Christmas and be awarded before Easter for a November 21 start date. This year we remain with our current provider, but again reflected back into the budget. That's coming out of a 5-year deal, so we expect to see a small increase on the next 5-year deal. Moving on to dredging, I will mention this to a point. This is obviously, we engaged back in December 19 to get our campaign underway. There is a sort of tick box scenario of the MMO, the Dutchy, the sampling, the survey work then interpreted into a tender document that gives the best information going forward. We were racing ahead with some topics and stalling behind with others, and sort of COVID hit. So we've found ourselves in this position now where we've got a survey, we've now got samples, we've now got MMO clarification. It's whether we can achieve the tendering process and awardment in time to go and do like a February dredge date. It's very ambitious, and I'm very cautious that we still don't quite know where we're at with COVID this winter, and our staff involvement with the dredging campaign is very labour intensive, where we're working all hours of the day, working around the dredgers to remove parts of our infrastructure so they can sweep in behind, do the dredging, survey what they've done. We then agree that that's sufficient, then we put the infrastructure back. So I'm cautious that although I want to achieve this still, that if we have any sort of restrictions put upon us or staff illness, my priority has to be servicing and maintaining our infrastructure, and the dredging would naturally come second. So the plan will be to, although monies comes out of reserves, the timing isn't actually that sensitive. We just have to be careful with our survey work that we then don't have an out-of-date survey. So plan is still to go for early part of next year if achievable, and if not, it would be the early part of 22, because we don't see a window in the off season of 21. So the September through to December is just too busy with our own operations. So we'll see how this process works going forward. Then brings me on to Harbour security.
Sorry, Cam, before we move on, there was a question from Councillor Long about dredging.
Apologies, sorry, I had my papers up.
Yeah, sorry, that was me. Yeah. Sorry, Mark, yes.
Yeah, Cam, you almost touched on it. If we did have to move the dredging to 22, would the current surveys still be applicable, and would the MMO agreement still stand, or will we have to go through those hoops again?
No, Mark, they would still stand. It's basically the longevity of the survey. You might see a very small increase in silt build-up, but our consultants are happy looking at the 5-year build up to now that is a marginal figure, and actually the surveys thus far are looking pretty positive of the amount that has been built up in the maintenance areas. As far as the MMO, this took a lot of work. We as a harbour authority under the Piers and Harbours Act are exempt from an MMO license. However, the MMO brilliantly stipulate back to us that we have to be confident that sufficient modelling and sampling has been done to carry out our exemption. Now, when you get in between the wordy bitty bits, essentially it means they put all the onus on you, and at any point they could come and check that you're doing that. So we, like the previous 2 campaigns, have carried out sufficient levels of sampling, and in fact we've revisited that sampling a couple of weeks ago to be belt and braces. So in a very long-winded answer, if we had to wait to 22, it is marginal but acceptable to go on the current findings that we have.
Okay, thanks, Cam.
But it's also important to make sure that we carry on with the timetable of some kind or other, because if we let this slip, it won't be easy to restart it.
Absolutely, Hugh, and that's why our ambition is still to go for February, because that is bang on the 5 years.
Yeah.
However, the surveyors have come back and actually said your build up this 5 years is actually less than your previous 5 years. So you do have a window of opportunity if you needed to. But obviously, when we started this back in December last year, it was always our ambition to be done for February next year.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any further questions, or shall I move on to Harbour security?
Press on Harbour security. Yeah.
So just before I go into the paper itself, I feel it's appropriate now to acknowledge the letter from the public question time. And I know, Julian, you've spoken to Mr. Allen, as have I. To raise his points, if I can remember, no, the patrols are not on every night of the week. And in fact, never have been since their existence. It was the seesaw of affordability and what we could expect our users to pay. They obviously have a ramped up rota system, so in the winter less shifts, in the summer more shifts, and they work to a set of QR codes around the harbour, so we can track them on their movements of where they've been. It's a very good system. We can't get them to be everywhere at all times. There are weather restrictions on when they operate by boat, and obviously tidal restrictions when they're in the upper reaches of the harbour. We've really used them to their full extent this year. Sadly, and I suppose we've all seen the knock-on effect of this, the COVID restrictions with schools being shut did bring on quite a lot of antisocial behaviour from school children or near as damn it that age. I know here in Salcombe we suffered from it, particularly in the height of the season, but Kingsbridge in particular, we really suffered from it in Kingsbridge, Newbridge, Frogmore not so much, Southpool obviously not so much, but Newbridge and Kingsbridge were real hot spots for mindless damage and petty crime. And I'm not at all condoning it or in fact making excuses, but the statistics have just hemorrhaged themselves with an example will be a canoe or dinghy will be stolen from the dinghy rack because it's not padlocked or secured in. Kids will row out to a boat that isn't theirs and jump up off it and jump into the water from it, but in doing so will put their foot through the forward hatch because they don't understand that it's not a load-bearing part of the boat, and if you're jumping in onto the water from it, it causes damage. Now, we worked very closely with the local police to try and move them on. We upped the security measures, we signposted it, we asked our security contractor to concentrate on these areas. We did the best we could, but it just didn't stop it. We had Kingsbridge Estuary Boat Club doing a fantastic job as volunteers, trying to keep the pontoons clear up at Kingsbridge. But that is where we found ourselves. The desire for CCTV has certainly been a desire for the Harbour Authority. We have good CCTV here in only key areas. I'm minded that Salcombe Town Council this year had their own security firm doing foot patrols. They have an ambition to have greater CCTV coverage. I think what my paper is trying to say is I would feel more comfortable setting up a Harbour Board workshop, a volunteer work, not a full board meeting or not a full workshop, just members that would be interested in discussing the options going forward as a separate workshop, to look at how we go about the tendering process for our next security tender. That covers all bases, because I must stress the point that every berth holder pays a security charge, because we offer that service, and if we were to have CCTV, that CCTV would either have to cover all berths, or then we're being discriminative against some berths and not others, or we find ways of having patrols and CCTV. So I think that is a bigger piece of work that I'd welcome a smaller working party to form ahead of then a procurement run for next year, where I believe the security contract is up in October 21. I'm probably going to pause there and have any questions about the procurement update before I go on to the final point of projects.
Thanks, Cam. Members, I see that Mark Long's happy to be involved. I don't know if Ali, if you're happy to be involved, or if that's you'd want to be on that working group. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'd love to get involved and also get the local police involved as well on that meeting working group.
Okay, yeah. So that's Ali and Mark and Malcolm. So that's three. And Ian may come in as well. So that's I would have thought, yeah, and Ian too. So that's four there. Cam, to take that forward.
That's brilliant. I'll liaise directly, and we'll set up a.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Well, thank you, members, for that. Right. And any more questions about procurement?
If I just make a comment on the security.
Yes, of course.
Local crime rises of this size can actually be down to fewer than half a dozen people, and it causes great alarm, but it's almost as easy to stop as it is quick to start up. You mustn't. It's not that you've got a large number of offenders. You've got the same small group of people doing a lot of mischief over a single season. So I don't think we should despair about it, but it's extremely difficult to cover in a harbour of this size. And whilst CCTV is extremely good, and you can now set it up where you don't even have an electricity supply to it, it doesn't come free.
No, you're absolutely right, Hugh, and I'm assuming that that's the kind of discussion that will be had within the group and also with the new contractor. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the way you were talking about that, Hugh, it's almost as if you were talking from experience there.
That's how I used to earn my living.
Yeah. No, I didn't think that. I mean, it's one of the perpetrators, but there we are. No, it's still not. In your youth, but there we are. Okay, look. Any more on procurement? No. In which case, we'll move to the project updates. Cam.
Thank you, Julian. I will take 0 credit for the projects update. Dan Field, very kindly, he's helped prepare this sort of couple of paragraphs, as he was unable to commit to the meeting this afternoon. I think, in a nutshell, both the commercial units and the harbour depot are going to have a review, but form part of a tendering process in the new year. The funding we were sadly unsuccessful on, which Dan did a huge amount of work, and was literally the last hurdle. But I think the drive now, from what I understand, is that the only way we're really going to get concrete figures that can have a decision made is based on a tendering process that we can physically go, it's going to cost X and Y to build these projects. Now, Dan did speak to me earlier on today, and he's confident that will happen. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, or we, the Harbour Authority, are concerned, there is still a need for both, and the commercial units are, they fall part sort of hand in hand with our operation, like we mentioned earlier about the infrastructure of the car park and how that is a direct link to the Harbour Authority, as will be these commercial units, because it's a string to the bow. They will give us great benefit in having local marine contractors on the doorstep, being able to service, maintain, move on customers' requirements. The Harbour Depot, where I say just needs to form a bit of a review. To touch on the Harbour Office, we're still waiting on feedback from Covenant beneficiaries. I think it would be over ambitious to say that that will get a positive outcome. So it might be that to achieve everything we want to achieve in the Harbour Office, vis-a-vis the facilities we want to offer our visiting yachtsmen, there might have to be a reduction in some of the size of the main office space at the Harbour Office, which then just might require a rework of the office space in the Harbour workshop. It's all very much up in the air at the moment, but that's as general update as I can give. If you have more pertinent questions, I'm sure Dan will be able to pick these up. But from our side of things, it's just a waiting game now for tendering.
Thanks, Cam. Malcolm, you'd like to comment?
Yes, if I could briefly comment. One of the big benefits of COVID, or no, maybe not, is the loss of the White Strand Harbour Office has been the porter cabin that has been in Shadycombe. That has actually transformed the way in which the harbour does its business there, and is a great success. So in relation to relinquishing some space in the White Strand Harbour Office, I think the porter cabin has proved that business can be done, quite a lot of business, not all business, but some business can be done from the porter cabin. In relation to the commercial units and the depot, I strongly feel that the Harbour Board should push these, and in particular the electric power points. And this also relates to the lack of, if we're all going to drive electric cars to our sailing destination, we need power down at Shadycombe, and I would hope that the Harbour Board and South Hams and the Town Council can work together to get a package together to upgrade the electrics at Shadycombe, which I understand is a big capital item, in order for our electric cars to be charged and our depot to operate, and the commercial units to operate. End of comment.
Thank you, Malcolm. Yeah, no, very, very pertinent. It's something we're all going to have to move ahead with electric charging. Right, and you'll see the comments there from Mark about AESCOM. Hopefully that doesn't affect us. We don't seem to be having much luck with our projects within Salcombe. Hope that isn't another stumbling block, but I presume that the officers are aware of the situation there.
Julian, I was only made aware today. We have a contract with them to deliver some stuff, and so it's pretty current news. So I'm not sure how it will play out. Yeah. Okay,
well, I hope that's noted then. Officers note that. I mean, I think Chris is still with us. Make sure that Dan is aware. Good. Right. Any other comments? Thanks, Chris. Yeah. Any other comments on the Harbour Master's report? No. In which case that brings us to the end of the meeting. Once again, thank you very much to members of the board for your time and considerations of the topics. Thank you also to Pauline for your work on all the accounts, much appreciated. And of course, a massive thanks to Cam and the team for for doing a really great job during the summer in particularly difficult circumstances. I think it's a tribute to you and your team. Right, and at which point I shall close the meeting. Thank you all very much. Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks, Chairman.